5 alien princesses stood before the human war hero. He could choose power, wealth, a fleet, or a royal bride. Everyone expected him to choose the strongest princess. Instead, Mason Hale walked past them all and stopped in front of Lyra, the scarred princess nobody respected. The entire palace laughed at his choice, but Lyra didn't smile. She leaned closer, raised a small data slate, and showed him 6 terrifying words. The palace has already been breached. And in that moment, Mason realized he hadn't chosen the weakest princess. He had chosen the only one who knew the truth.
The choice nobody understood. The Victory Hall of Asteron was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling vanished into darkness above pillars of black crystal. Blue light flowed through the floor like trapped lightning. Hundreds of Astery nobles stood in perfect rings around the central platform, watching me with the careful interest people usually reserve for dangerous animals. My name was Mason Hale, commander in the Terran Expeditionary Corps. 11 days earlier, my unit had held Halcyon Gate against a Carrid assault long enough for civilian ships to escape. 32 humans went in, 6 came back. The Astery called it impossible. Humans called it surviving. Now, Emperor Sailor wanted to reward me. You may claim one gift from the crown: land, wealth, a warship, or a royal bond. That last choice stirred the room. A royal bond was more than marriage. It gave the chosen royal equal legal standing with me and tied our futures together under ancient law. No outsider had received that right in almost 3 centuries. 5 princesses stood beside the throne. Princess Vaela, the eldest, wore fleet armor and carried herself like someone born to command. The second was a diplomat with 3 trade alliances to her name. The third had become famous across half the sector for beauty, charity, and carefully managed public appearances. The fourth was an engineer whose reactor designs powered much of the capital. Then there was Lyra. She stood near a pillar, half outside the ceremonial light. No jewels, no attendants, no royal insignia except a small silver pin at her collar. A thin scar crossed the left side of her face. Her left arm rested inside a dark mechanical brace that reached from shoulder to fingertips. My sisters watched me. Lyra watched the room, the doors, the guards, the ceiling vents, then me. That was when I became interested. Minister Oren, my assigned Astery advisor, leaned toward me. Commander Hale, choose Princess Vaela. You gain the fleet, the court, and a future no human has ever held here. I walked past Vaela, past the diplomat, past the celebrity, past the engineer. The hall grew quieter with every step. When I stopped in front of Lyra, she finally met my eyes. Pale gold, steady, not hopeful, careful. Oren caught my sleeve. Do not do this. I pulled free. Emperor Sailor's expression hardened. Human, state your choice clearly. I looked at Lyra. At last her composure cracked, not with joy, with warning. I choose Princess Lyra. The hall erupted. A noble laughed. Another said far too loudly, the damaged one? Lyra flinched. I turned toward the voice. She has a name. Silence returned. Sailor studied me. Your choice cannot be changed. I know. Lyra stepped closer and raised a small slate. Her mechanical fingers trembled once. Then she typed 6 words and turned the screen toward me. My stomach went cold. I had seen those exact words in a stolen Carrid command file at Halcyon Gate. The palace has already been breached.
The first attack. The message stayed on Lyra's slate for less than 2 seconds. Then she erased it. I lowered my voice. How long? Her eyes moved toward the nearest guard before she typed beneath the edge of her sleeve. 3 months. Minister Oren approached with a ceremonial smile. "Commander Hale, the bonding chamber is ready. Princess Lyra will be escorted separately." "I'm going with her." "That is not required." Something tightened behind his eyes. Lyra touched my sleeve. A warning. Then every blue light in the hall turned red. A low alarm rolled through the stone. The massive doors slammed shut. Nobles shouted. Royal guards closed around Emperor Salor and 4 princesses. No one moved toward Lyra. That bothered me more than the alarm itself. Someone had planned the security response as carefully as the attack. A black object dropped from the ceiling. Small, round, familiar. "Kharid needle drone!" I hit Lyra hard enough to throw us behind a marble bench. Silver darts crossed the space where her head had been. One struck a noble in the throat. He collapsed without a sound. The guards opened fire. The drone shattered. 5 more unfolded from decorative ceiling panels. Not through windows, not through doors. They had been installed inside the palace. Lyra's warning had not been about enemies getting in. They were already here. I pulled her to a side arch. Oren stepped in front of us. "Remain in the hall." His hand disappeared inside his robe. I grabbed his wrist. He was holding a control key. Lyra saw it. Her mechanical brace snapped forward and struck his hand. The key skidded across the floor. For 1 second, Oren's mask slipped. Not fear, anger. A royal guard raised his rifle. I expected him to aim at the drones. He aimed at us. I shoved Lyra aside as the weapon fired. The shot carved a black line across the wall. Now I knew the attack had 2 layers. The machines were creating panic. The people inside the palace were selecting targets. Lyra caught my jacket and pulled me through a narrow opening behind a ceremonial curtain. We entered an unlit service corridor. She ran. I followed. At the 7th wall panel, she pressed her metal palm against a faded mark. Stone slid aside. A hidden passage opened. "How did you know about this?" She typed while moving. "Nobody asks where I go." Boots thundered into the corridor behind us. Lyra sealed the wall. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. Now I saw her breathing hard. "You expected danger." She nodded. "But not this." Another nod. I started to ask who she suspected. The wall behind us exploded. Heat and stone blasted through the passage. I covered her as debris struck my back. When the dust cleared, Lyra raised her slate. 1 sentence appeared. "They are not searching for you, Mason." She swallowed and added another. "They are searching for me."
The princess who watched. The words changed everything. I had assumed the Kharid wanted me dead because of Halcyon Gate. Lyra knew better. "Why you?" She led me deeper into the tunnel before answering. Her brace gave off a narrow strip of white light, just enough to reveal old pipes and forgotten cables. At the next junction, she stopped. "I found unauthorized military signals inside palace systems 12 weeks ago." Kharid. "Partly. The encryption was Kharid. The transmitters were Astro. An enemy network using local infrastructure." "Who did you tell?" She hesitated. "Minister Oren." I felt my jaw tighten. "What did he do?" "Called it a fault in my neural interface." She tapped the brace. 2 engineers checked independently. Both disappeared. That gave us motive, and probably a list of people Oren had already silenced. We reached an abandoned storage chamber between palace levels. Broken statues leaned against dusty walls. Ceremonial furniture lay beneath gray sheets. A royal guard was sprawled beside the opposite door. I checked him. Still warm. Dead. Lyra crouched and pointed behind his ear. A small burn mark showed 3 intersecting lines inside a circle. I had seen it on Kharid covert troops. Kharid infiltration mark. Lyra shook her head. She removed the guard's glove. His wrist showed an Astery family pattern. Born on this world. Not an infiltrator from outside. A recruit from within. That meant uniforms, clearances, and trusted faces could no longer tell me who was safe. Lyra opened an old cabinet and removed a portable data reader. You keep equipment hidden in forgotten rooms? Her expression said I should have learned not to ask obvious questions. Right. She connected the reader to the guard's terminal. Most recent orders were encrypted. One was not. Transfer Emperor Sailor to Vault 9. Authorized by Minister Orin. Lyra stopped moving. Is Vault 9 a shelter? She looked at me, then typed. It is beneath the Western Archives. That was not my question. Her next answer came slowly. It is used for executions. I checked the dead guard's rifle. How long? Main corridors, 14 minutes. Your way? 8. Lead. We moved fast. Lyra took narrow stairs, maintenance ladders, and a sealed passage behind an old ventilation bank. She never hesitated. Years of being overlooked had given her something the court could not buy. Access without attention. Halfway down a vertical shaft, the dead guard's terminal chimed. A new command had arrived. Lyra opened it. Vault 9, advanced termination to immediate. I looked at the timestamp. Less than a minute old. Someone had realized the Emperor was still alive. Someone wanted that corrected before the palace regained control. Lyra looked at me. Fear had left her face. Now there was something harder. Purpose. I slung the rifle across my back. We're not getting there in 8 minutes. Her eyebrows lifted. I pointed toward the shaft below. We're getting there in 4. Then I jumped.
The wrong traitor. The shaft dropped farther than I expected. I hit the lower platform hard, rolled, and came up with one knee screaming. Lyra landed beside me, using her mechanical arm to catch the rail and slow herself. "Useful brace," I whispered. She gave me a dry look. 2 guards protected Vault 9. We had no time for a clean plan. I tossed a loose maintenance tool down the opposite corridor. Both men turned toward the sound. I hit the first from behind. Lyra drove her brace into the second guard's rifle. Metal cracked. The weapon folded near the receiver. The guard stared at it. Lyra stared at it too. Apparently neither of them knew the brace could do that. I finished the fight. Seconds later, both guards were unconscious and restrained with their own cuffs. Lyra opened the vault. Emperor Sailor stood inside, alive. 2 armed officers surrounded him, and Princess Vela held a pistol pointed in his direction. Lyra froze. I raised the stolen rifle. "Drop it." Vela turned. "Mason, do not—" She fired. The shot passed beside her father and struck one of the officers behind him. Before the second could move, Vela fired again. He dropped. The chamber went silent. Vela lowered the pistol. "You took your time." I kept my rifle on her. "Explain." "Orin ordered me to bring father here for protection. Once we arrived, these 2 tried to seal me outside." Sailor's anger filled the small chamber. "And then?" Vela kicked away one officer's weapon. One received an execution authorization. Lyra held out the dead guard's terminal. Vela read the order. Her expression sharpened. "You found this?" Lyra nodded, then typed, "I warned Orin months ago that palace systems were compromised." Vela slowly turned toward her father. Sailor said nothing. That silence told me Lyra had not merely been ignored by one minister, she had been ignored by the system around him. The floor trembled. Every screen in Vault 9 came alive. Orbital defense grid, offline. Sailor stepped toward the nearest display. "No!" Vela pulled up tactical data. Outer platforms were shutting down in sequence, not destroyed, disabled remotely. How long until the car had reached firing range? I asked. 26 minutes. Lyra began searching her brace, then stopped. There is another defense network. Sailor frowned. What network? Lyra hesitated before answering. Mother's. The late Empress Arel had died 15 years earlier in a shuttle disaster. Lyra lifted her brace. A gold symbol appeared under the dark metal. The same symbol was etched into one corner of the vault. Vela went pale. Mother's private war seal. Lyra nodded. She built an emergency system before she died. Sailor stepped closer. Why did she hide it from me? Lyra's answer was almost painful to read. Maybe she did not trust the throne. The vault speaker activated. Orin's voice filled the chamber. Your Majesty, remain where you are. Then his tone lost every trace of courtesy. You are making this unnecessarily difficult. Sailor stared at the speaker. He suddenly looked less like an emperor and more like a husband realizing his dead wife had prepared for a betrayal he never saw coming.
The Last Crown. Lyra called the hidden network the Last Crown. Its only surviving access point lay beneath the abandoned Royal Observatory on the northern ridge. The main corridors were controlled by Orin's security teams, so Lyra took us underground. Our route passed through an old transit station, now packed with civilians. Families crowded the platforms. Workers still wore factory uniforms. Children slept beneath emergency blankets, while distant explosions shook dust from the ceiling. When Emperor Sadler entered, people bowed instinctively. Then they noticed Vela. Finally, they noticed Lyra. Many looked uncertain. One boy pointed at her mechanical arm. Princess Broken Hand. His mother went pale. I'm so sorry. Lyra stopped. For a moment, I thought she would keep walking. Instead, she knelt. The boy stared at the brace. Lyra removed a small blue pin from her collar and placed it in his hand. Then she typed, "Machines break, people heal." "Does it hurt?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "Are you scared?" Another nod. The boy frowned. "Princesses aren't supposed to be scared." Her reply came quickly. "Brave people are scared first." The boy considered that, then closed his fingers around the pin. We moved on. Sadler watched his daughter for several steps. He did not say anything. He did not need to. At the northern service tunnel, 3 palace guards blocked our path. Their uniforms were legitimate. Their orders were not. By authority of Minister Orin, the royal family must surrender. Vela stepped forward. I outrank Orin. Emergency authority supersedes hereditary command. That told us how far the coup had spread. A firefight would endanger the shelter behind us. Lyra pointed toward an overhead maintenance line. 5 minutes later, all 3 guards were tied inside a supply room, wondering how the royal family had vanished. We reached the observatory with 13 minutes before the unidentified fleet entered weapons range. Lyra pressed her brace to the sealed entrance. Red light. Access denied. Vela tried her royal code. Rejected. Sadler tried his. Rejected. Lyra examined the system log. Her face lost color. She turned the display toward us. Identity, Lyra Sadler. Legal status, deceased. Sadler whispered, "Impossible." Vela checked the entry date. 14 years ago. 1 year after Empress Arel's death. No clerical accident lasted 14 years. Lyra had not simply been pushed aside. Someone had legally erased her while she was still living in the palace. Before anyone could speak, the observatory wall became transparent. Inside, warning lights flashed across an enormous tactical display. The Last Crown was active. Dozens of orbital weapons were powering up. For one heartbeat, relief hit me. Then I saw the targeting lines. They were not aimed at the approaching fleet. Every weapon was pointed down. cities, power stations, civilian transit hubs. Orin had found the last crown before us. A final authorization timer appeared across the glass. 1 minute. In 60 seconds, Asteron's secret defense system would begin murdering the world it had been built to save.
6 seconds. The countdown began at 60 seconds. Vela moved toward the observatory entrance. It is sealed. Lyra was already searching the old schematics stored inside her brace. She pointed to a coolant channel beneath the wall. I understood. Vela did too. No! I pulled off my jacket. Mason, that channel is for maintenance drones. Then I'll identify as maintenance. Even Sailor almost smiled. Lyra did not. Her slate flashed. Cycle opens for 12 seconds every minute. Internal temperature exceeds human tolerance. How far? 30 meters. She stared at me. I crouched beside the vent. Lyra, you found the problem. Let me do the stupid part. The vent opened. I crawled in. Heat wrapped around me instantly. The metal scraped skin from my shoulders. The gate slammed shut behind my boots. No airflow, no room to turn. I counted. At 58 seconds, the next vent opened. I dragged myself through before it closed. A grate appeared ahead. I kicked. It fell into the observatory. 2 armed men turned. They had been watching the main entrance, not the floor. I dropped onto the first. The second fired. The shot grazed my ribs. I reached him before he could fire again. 23 seconds remained. I opened the main door. Lyra ran to the console. Sailor and Vela followed. Orin was gone. The last crown continued its firing sequence automatically. Lyra tried an override. Rejected. Sailor tried sovereign authority. Rejected. Vela used fleet command. Rejected. Manual shutdown? Lyra pointed to 2 reactor controls below us, opposite sides. Both must release together. Vela ran left. I went right. Radiation warnings activated the moment we entered the lower chamber. 10 seconds. I reached my lever. Locked. Vela's was locked too. Lyra! For 1 heartbeat, no answer came. Then a rough voice broke through the speaker. Again. I froze. Lyra had spoken. Not through her slate. Her real voice. 8 seconds. I pulled. Nothing. 5. I braced 1 foot against the console and used everything I had. Vela shouted from across the chamber. Her lock broke. Mine followed. The countdown stopped. 0006. The weapons powered down. When I climbed back upstairs, Lyra stood with 1 hand against her throat. You spoke. Hurts, she whispered. I smiled despite the burn in my side. Still sounded good. She rolled her eyes. Then the communications console activated. A Kharid military signal forced its way onto the screen. Vela raised her pistol. A scarred alien officer appeared. Explosions flashed behind him. My name is Admiral Tarek Voss. He looked directly at me. If you are Mason Hale, listen carefully. I'm listening. We did not come to invade Asteron. Vela stepped closer. Your fleet is entering our atmosphere. The Admiral's expression remained grim. Yes. Then what are you doing? Another explosion shook his bridge. The Admiral gripped the console. Running. He leaned toward the camera. Minister Orin is not only inside your government. His next words silenced the room. He owns part of mine. The war that was manufactured. Admiral Voss sent everything he had. Payment records, private orders, weapons transfers hidden inside neutral shipping contracts, encrypted conversations between Asteron officials and Kharid officers. Minister Orin had not created one betrayal. He had built a market for fear. Small raids became retaliation. Retaliation became border battles. Border battles became funerals. Every funeral gave extremists on both sides another reason to demand more war. Vela watched the evidence without blinking.
My fleet lost 12,000 people. Voss answered quietly. Kharid families buried more. You helped him. Yes. No excuse, no speech about duty, just the truth. I respected that more than denial. Why turn now, I asked. Because his final order was not victory. Voss transmitted a file titled Unity Directive. Its objective was simple: break both governments badly enough that emergency military councils could replace them. Oren already had loyal officers prepared to sit on those councils. He did not want Asteron. He did not want Kharid territory. He wanted permanent crisis because permanent crisis made permanent emergency power seem reasonable. Peace would have ended his influence. Fear could make it limitless. Sailor lowered himself into a chair. I appointed him. Lyra's damaged voice came softly. He studied what frightened us. Then she returned to the slate. Fear makes people surrender choices before they surrender cities. Voss nodded. That is why he was dangerous. The observatory screens suddenly went black. Public communications vanished. A moment later, Oren appeared on every display. Citizens of Asteron, he said, our world has been betrayed. He showed carefully selected images: Kharid ships, burning defense stations, dead palace guards. Then my face, Vela's, Lyra's, Emperor sailors. Oren claimed I had manipulated the royal family. He called Vela part of a Kharid conspiracy. He blamed Lyra's damaged neural systems for the failure of planetary defense. Finally, he declared Sailor mentally unfit. Emergency authority now belonged to Minister Oren. My wrist transmitter crackled. Hale, Sergeant Juno Reyes, one of the 6 humans who came back from Halcyon Gate. Still breathing. Good, because every police unit in the capital just got your face. I've looked worse. Debatable. Where are you? Terran Embassy. I can bring Marines. No visible human troops. Oren wants proof of a human coup. Juno sighed. You always ruin the fun plans. Lyra enlarged the Last Crown map. A forgotten transit line ran directly beneath the city to Crown Spire, the main communications tower. Sailor stared at it. Arel built a private route there? Lyra nodded. Her mother had not only prepared weapons, she had prepared a way around compromised authority. Vela checked her pistol. We reach the spire and expose him. Lyra lifted her brace. A small gold symbol appeared. Hidden emergency broadcast access. There was only one problem. The system still considered her dead. Lyra typed, I can reach every screen on Asteron. Then she looked at Vela. But first, someone has to make me legally alive.
Officially alive. The old transit pod shook beneath the Capitol as if it resented being awakened after 15 years. Lyra sat beside the control panel with her royal record open. Deceased. One word, 14 years of consequences. Vela studied the entry. I can change it. Lyra looked at her. Vela removed a thin command ring from her finger. As firstborn, I carry a mirror of the Royal Identity Registry. Sailor frowned. You never told me. Vela answered without looking away from Lyra. There are many things this family never discussed. She pressed the ring to the brace. The full record opened. Lyra Sailor, status, deceased. Cause, medical termination. Sailor stood. Medical termination? Lyra went very still. That wording meant more than a clerical deletion. Someone had formally declared that she had died under treatment. Vela opened the authorization chain. The primary official had been dead for 13 years. The secondary witness was not. Minister Oren. Sailor closed his eyes. He erased you. Lyra stared at the screen.
For years, she had believed she was ignored because people found her uncomfortable. Now she knew part of that invisibility had been engineered. Vela swallowed. I should have noticed. Lyra's reply was immediate. Yes. No comfort, no cruelty, just truth. Vela nodded once. You are right. Then she placed her palm over the command ring. The registry requested confirmation. First Air Authority accepted. The display refreshed. Lyra Sailor. Status. Living. Lyra stared at that final word. Her eyes filled. This time she did not hide it. The pod stopped beneath Crown Spire. A hidden maintenance wall opened. Above us, Orin continued broadcasting. Security forces covered every official entrance. None guarded the forgotten rail. Lyra connected her brace to an emergency terminal. The response appeared instantly. Welcome, Princess Lyra. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened the hidden channel. Across Asteron, Orin vanished from every public screen. Lyra appeared instead. Scar visible, brace uncovered, no jewels, no prepared speech. Her throat worked before sound came. My name is Lyra Sailor. The words were rough but clear. I have been alive every day that your record said I was dead. She displayed the registry, then Orin's execution order, the last Crown targeting sequence, Voss's files, payment records, private communications. The proof moved across the planet. Lyra did not accuse wildly. She explained, step by step, what happened, who benefited, who died. Her voice failed twice. Each time she continued with the slate until she could speak again. The broadcast chamber door opened behind us. Minister Orin stood there with 20 armed guards. He looked at Lyra's image on every screen, then at Lyra herself. His face showed genuine irritation. You were easier to manage when no one listened. Lyra faced him. You made sure of that. Orin raised one hand. 20 rifles came up. You have shown them information. Now I will show them authority. He pointed at Emperor Sailor. Fire.
The choice of the guards. No rifle fired. Orin's hand remained raised. Fire. One guard lowered his weapon. Then another. The captain nearest him stepped aside. We saw the records. You are soldiers, Orin snapped. Yes. Then obey me. Our oath is to Asteron. The broadcast was still live. The entire planet watched the moment Orin discovered that power built on secrecy becomes fragile in daylight. He drew a pistol. I moved. The shot went past me. Vela shoved Sailor sideways. The blast struck her shoulder. She fell. Lyra cried out and dropped beside her. 3 officers loyal to Orin raised their weapons. The palace guards turned on them. Shots cracked through the chamber. Seconds later, the loyalists were down. Orin ran. I followed him through a side door onto an exterior service platform. Wind tore at my uniform. The city spread hundreds of meters below us. He climbed toward an emergency shuttle dock. You think this changes anything? He shouted. It changes your schedule. Tomorrow they will be afraid again. That was true. Fear was not something we could arrest, but the people using it could be exposed. Orin reached the shuttle. The engines started. Then an ugly Terran cargo tug rose from below the tower. Juno Reyes sat behind the controls. Her voice came through my transmitter. You asked for subtle? The tug slammed sideways into the shuttle dock. Metal screamed. Orin's craft spun and struck the tower. The door ripped open. He stumbled out, lost his footing, and went over the edge. I dropped flat and caught his wrist. He stared up at me, not grateful, confused. Why? My burned shoulder screamed. Dead conspirators make terrible witnesses. Security guards reached us and pulled him back.
They restrained him. When I returned to the broadcast chamber, Vela was conscious. A medic had sealed her wound. Lyra was still at the console. She had not stopped working. She coordinated defense commanders, canceled false arrest orders, restored civilian channels. Admiral Voss ordered the main Kharid fleet to withdraw beyond weapons range. One by one, Asteri stations resumed local control. The coup was collapsing without a final battle. Sailor stepped into the broadcast frame. He removed the heavy silver chain from his shoulders. I had seen it during the ceremony, symbol of the sovereign's appointed protector. He held it toward Lyra. I failed to hear you when your voice carried no authority. The hall went quiet. I will not repeat that failure. Lyra accepted the chain. Before anyone could react, a warning alarm cut through the chamber. A tactical officer shouted from the far console. One Kharid carrier is refusing Admiral Voss's withdrawal order. The screen showed a massive ship turning toward the capital. Its weapons were charging. Voss appeared on the channel. His expression changed when he saw the vessel. General Korv. A friend of yours? I asked. Formerly. The carrier locked onto Crown Spire. A single high-energy shot launched. The computer gave us 40 seconds to impact.
Predict the enemy. The shot was already moving too fast for a normal defense response. The palace began evacuating Crown Spire. Lyra stayed at the defense console. Vila, one arm sealed in a medical sling, refused to leave. Admiral Voss opened a channel to the rogue carrier. General Korv, stand down! No response. Korv helped Oren build the military network, Voss said. If the coup fails, he wants the war to survive. Only one last Crown interceptor had completed its restart. Its targeting computer was damaged, and the incoming weapon kept changing velocity as it crossed the upper atmosphere. Lyra tried to build a firing solution manually. The computer could follow the projectile. It simply could not predict it fast enough. "Mason," Juno said over my transmitter, "we are losing the window." I watched the tactical display. At Halcyon Gate, Kharid commanders had taught us something useful. Under pressure, they trusted doctrine. Doctrine meant predictable choices. "Lyra, stop trying to predict the weapon." She turned toward me. "Predict Korv." Instantly, understanding came. Korv believed Asteron's defenses were still crippled. That meant he would have selected the standard firing corridor his military considered hardest to intercept. Lyra stopped chasing the changing projectile and calculated backward from the commander who launched it. The interceptor rotated. Sailor watched the display. "If your assumption is wrong, then Korv finally surprises a human." Vila gave me a flat look. "It's not the moment for pride." "It's not pride, it's motivation." Lyra fired. The interceptor vanished into the upper atmosphere. For several heartbeats, the display showed nothing. Then, the sky outside turned white. The two weapons collided above the city. A shockwave rolled across Asteron. Windows trembled. The tower lights went out. Then emergency power returned. Crown Spire was still standing. The sound reached us seconds later. Cheering, not from the chamber, from outside. Streets, shelters, rooftops. A city realizing it had survived. Korv's carrier turned away. This time, Asteron's defense stations were awake. Kharid's ships moved to block its escape. Admiral Voss opened one final channel. "General Korv, power down." Silence. Then the carrier's weapons went dark. The war did not end with an explosion. It ended when one ship chose not to fire again. I sat against the wall. Only then did I notice how much blood had dried along my side. Lyra sat beside me. "You need doctor." I sound like Juno. "That is insult?"
Usually. A tired smile touched her face. For a few seconds, there were no alarms, no gunfire, no ministers, just breathing. Then Lyra asked, "Why me?" I knew what she meant. Back in the victory hall. "The doors," I said. She frowned. "You were the only princess watching them instead of watching me." That was enough. It was enough to make me curious. And now? Before I could answer, Emperor Sailor entered carrying the imperial crown. Lyra stood. Her father looked at her for a long moment. "The council is gathering." "For Oren's trial?" I asked. "No." He held the crown between both hands. "To decide who should lead Asteron after tonight." Then he looked directly at Lyra. "And every surviving counselor asked for you."
No longer invisible. 3 months later, Minister Oren stood trial, not before a secret royal chamber, before a joint tribunal broadcast to both civilizations. The evidence filled thousands of pages. Manufactured raids, payments to extremists, altered military orders, the false death record for Lyra, the attempted execution of Emperor Sailor, the plan to turn planetary defenses against civilians. General Korv testified after accepting responsibility for his part. Admiral Voss testified without asking for immunity. He admitted which orders he had followed and which deaths he had helped make possible. The tribunal sentenced Oren to permanent confinement, no execution. Lyra argued against it personally. "We do not prove that political murder is wrong by performing a cleaner version of it." Her voice had improved with treatment, still rough, still hers. The sentence stood. Valor returned to Fleet Command after recovering. She refused the position of heir. Reporters demanded an explanation. She gave them one sentence. "I know how to command ships. Lyra knows when they should stay home." That line traveled across the sector. Emperor Sailor remained sovereign during Reconstruction, but the court had already changed around his youngest daughter. Lyra became Crown Guardian. She attended military briefings, trade councils, intelligence hearings, and treaty negotiations. Some nobles tried to speak over her. Once. Lyra never competed for volume. She listened until everyone finished. Then she asked the question that exposed what they had all missed. People learned quickly. Asteron and the Carrid Union signed a formal ceasefire. Terran diplomats helped mediate because both sides trusted us equally badly. Juno claimed that made humanity perfect for diplomacy. I told her never to say that near an actual diplomat. I received offers too. Promotion, a military command, 2 advisory positions. One noble offered me an estate large enough to have its own weather system. I declined all of them. One evening, I found Lyra in the palace garden beside a newly planted oak from Earth. She touched one leaf carefully. "It grows slowly. Most useful things do." She looked at me. "Humans do not. We get impatient." That explains much. We sat beneath the young tree. Asteri lived far longer than humans. That fact had been sitting quietly between us for weeks. Lyra finally said, "You will age before me." "Probably. You say that as if discussing rain." "I can't negotiate with biology." Her mechanical hand rested beside mine. "You choose things that cannot last." I looked at her. "Everything lasts some amount of time." She turned toward me. "At Crown Spire, I asked why you would choose me now." "I remember. You did not answer." I took her hand. "At first, I chose you because everyone else was showing me what they wanted me to see. And you? You were trying to disappear." Her eyes lowered. That made me wonder what they had missed. She waited. "Now I choose you because I know exactly who you are." Her fingers tightened around mine. "I choose you, too." The palace bells rang before I could answer.
Lyra's whisk display activated. A formal summons filled the screen. Emperor Sailor had called the full council. One line appeared beneath it. Abdication session. Then another. Successor designated, Lyra Sailor. She read it twice. This time, when her hand trembled, it had nothing to do with fear.
The one they overlooked. The coronation took place in the same hall where I had first chosen Lyra. Nothing about the room had changed. Everything about the way people looked at her had. She entered without hiding the brace, without covering the scar, without replacing her natural voice with a ceremonial translator. Her 4 sisters walked behind her. Vela wore fleet white instead of royal gold. Emperor Sailor waited beside the throne. I spent much of my reign believing strength had a proper shape, confidence, rank, tradition, visibility. His gaze found Lyra. I mistook being noticed for being worthy. Then he removed the crown. For the first time in generations, an Asteran sovereign stepped down willingly. Lyra knelt. Sailor placed the crown on her head. The hall rose. The sound was enormous. Months earlier, the same people had laughed when I chose her. Lyra did not look at them with triumph. That was one of the reasons she deserved the throne. Her first reforms were practical: independent oversight for military intelligence, civilian review of emergency powers, automatic investigation whenever a citizen was legally erased from government records. The 2 engineers who had helped her uncover the original palace signals were found alive in a hidden detention site. Lyra restored their names publicly. The Kharid peace treaty took 11 months. Admiral Voss attended the signing. Vela commanded the Joint Honor Guard. Juno complained that royal food had too many sauces. I stood near the exit. Lyra noticed. You still watch doors. So do you. Habit. Useful one. Years later, historians would argue about when Asteran truly changed. Some chose Orin's arrest. Some chose the ceasefire. Some chose the coronation. I chose the moment before all of that. 5 princesses in a victory hall. 4 were positioned where everyone could admire them. 1 stood near a pillar where people had trained themselves not to look. The Asteran believed strength announced itself. Humans had learned a different lesson. Our species survived because we kept finding value in unlikely places. A strange plant became medicine. A dangerous element became power. A failure became data. A wounded person became the one who knew how to keep others alive. We were very good at asking one stubborn question: what is everyone else missing? That question had brought me to Lyra. Not pity, not rebellion, recognition. After the treaty signing, we stood beneath the oak in the palace garden. It was taller now. Lyra took my hand. Would you still choose me? No. She stared at me. I let the silence sit for 1 second. Then I smiled. I wouldn't let an emperor turn it into a prize this time. Understanding softened her face. I would ask you. And if I said no, I'd be devastated. She laughed. The sound was still rough, still beautiful. And if I said yes, I'd stay as long as I get. Lyra rested her forehead against mine. Then ask. So I did. No court watched, no ancient law forced an answer. This time, the choice belonged to both of us. And when Lyra said yes, I finally understood why our story had spread beyond Asteron. Humanity had not saved an empire by choosing the strongest person in the room. We had helped save it by noticing that the strongest person had been standing in the shadows all along. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope.
Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.